All right, let's dive into the fascinating and complex world of nuclear weapons. To truly understand the current global nuclear landscape, we need to take a step back in time and look at the historical context of nuclear arms development. It's a story that begins in the midst of World War II with the Manhattan Project in the United States, which led to the creation of the first atomic bombs.
Wow, it's incredible to think that something so powerful started during such a tumultuous time. But how did we get from those first bombs to the massive stockpiles we hear about today?
Great question. After the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the world witnessed the sheer destructive power of nuclear weapons. This led to a race among nations to develop their own nuclear arsenals. The Cold War era saw the United States and the Soviet Union at the forefront of this arms race, each amassing tens of thousands of warheads. At its peak, the Soviet Union had about 33,000 operational warheads in 1988, while the United States peaked at over 32,000 in 1966.
That's mind-boggling. It's like they were collecting them like baseball cards. But why did they need so many? I mean, isn't one enough to cause massive destruction?
Absolutely, one is more than enough. But during the Cold War, it was all about deterrence. The idea was that having a large arsenal would prevent the other side from attacking, because any attack would lead to mutually assured destruction. It's like having a standoff where both parties have their fingers on the trigger, hoping the other doesn't pull it first.
Kind of like a high-stakes game of chicken, huh? But what about today? Are those stockpiles still as massive?
Not quite. Since the end of the Cold War, there have been significant reductions in nuclear arsenals, thanks to various arms control agreements. For instance, by 2010, the United States had reduced its stockpile to about 9,400 warheads, with only around 2,468 operational. Russia, after the Soviet Union's dissolution, also accelerated its dismantlement program, though the exact status of many warheads remains unclear.
It's reassuring to hear there have been reductions. But with all these treaties and agreements, why do some countries still push for more nuclear weapons?
That's a complex issue. For many countries, nuclear weapons are seen as a symbol of power and a deterrent against potential threats. Some nations, like North Korea, view them as essential for regime survival. Others, like India and Pakistan, see them as necessary to counterbalance regional rivals. It's a delicate balance of power, politics, and security.
I see. So it's not just about having them, but about the geopolitical chess game they represent. But what about the countries that haven't developed nuclear weapons? How do they fit into this landscape?
Many non-nuclear countries rely on alliances with nuclear-armed states for security guarantees. For example, NATO members benefit from the United States nuclear umbrella. Additionally, international treaties, like the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, aim to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament, while allowing for peaceful nuclear energy development.
It's like a global agreement to keep things in check. But with all these complexities, how do we ensure these weapons don't fall into the wrong hands?
That's one of the biggest challenges. Organizations like the International Atomic Energy Agency play a crucial role in monitoring nuclear programs and ensuring compliance with treaties. However, the risk of nuclear proliferation remains a significant concern, especially with the potential for non-state actors to acquire nuclear materials.
It's a bit like trying to keep a lid on Pandora's box, isn't it? So much potential for both good and harm.
Exactly. The global nuclear landscape is a testament to human ingenuity and the constant struggle to balance power with responsibility. As we move forward, it's crucial that we continue to work towards reducing nuclear risks and promoting peace and security worldwide. Now that we've set the stage with the historical context, let's dive deeper into the Cold War era, which was a pivotal time for nuclear arms development. The Cold War was essentially a period of intense rivalry and tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, which, as you might imagine, had a profound impact on the nuclear landscape.
Right, I've heard it was like a giant chess game, but with nuclear weapons as the pieces. How did it all start?
It really kicked off after World War II, when both superpowers emerged as the dominant global forces. The United States had already demonstrated its nuclear capabilities with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Soviet Union was keen to catch up. This led to an arms race where each side tried to outdo the other in terms of nuclear arsenal size and technological advancement.
So it was like a constant game of one-upmanship. But what were some of the key moments or turning points during this race?
One of the key moments was the testing of the Soviet Union's first atomic bomb in 1949, which marked the beginning of the nuclear arms race. This was followed by the development of the hydrogen bomb by both countries in the early 1950s, which was significantly more powerful than the atomic bombs used in World War II.
I can imagine the tension must have been palpable. But how did this race affect the stockpiles of nuclear weapons?
By the mid-1960s, the United States had amassed over 32,000 nuclear warheads, reaching its peak in 1966. The Soviet Union, not to be outdone, continued to build up its arsenal, eventually reaching about 33,000 operational warheads by 1988. It was a staggering display of military might and a testament to the era's intense competition.
That's a mind-boggling number of warheads. It's like they were preparing for a war that thankfully never happened. But what kept them from actually using these weapons?
The concept of mutually assured destruction played a crucial role. Both sides understood that using nuclear weapons would lead to catastrophic consequences for both, essentially ensuring that neither side would survive. This understanding acted as a deterrent, preventing either side from launching a first strike.
It's like having a loaded gun pointed at each other, but knowing that pulling the trigger would be suicidal. But were there any close calls during this period?
Absolutely. There were several tense moments, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, where the world was on the brink of nuclear war. It was a 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union over the installation of Soviet missiles in Cuba. Thankfully, diplomatic negotiations led to a peaceful resolution.
Phew, that sounds like a nail-biter. It's amazing how diplomacy managed to pull us back from the edge. But what eventually led to the reduction of these massive stockpiles?
The end of the Cold War in the early 1990s marked a significant turning point. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, both the United States and Russia began to engage in arms control negotiations, leading to treaties like the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, which aimed to significantly reduce the number of nuclear weapons.
It's reassuring to know that cooler heads prevailed and that efforts were made to reduce the nuclear threat. But do you think the lessons from the Cold War are still relevant today?
Absolutely. The Cold War taught us the importance of diplomacy, communication, and the need for international agreements to prevent nuclear proliferation. These lessons are crucial as we navigate the current global nuclear landscape and work towards a safer world. Having explored the Cold War era, let's shift our focus to modern nuclear strategies and the challenges that come with them. Today, the United States, like many nuclear-armed nations, continues to rely on a strategy of deterrence to maintain global stability.
Deterrence, that's the idea of preventing an attack by promising a devastating retaliation, right? But how does that play out in today's world? Kind of like a high-stakes game of chicken, huh? But what about today? Are those stockpiles still as massive?
Exactly. The U.S. maintains a strategic triad to ensure a credible deterrent. This triad consists of land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, strategic bombers, and ballistic missile submarines. Each leg of the triad provides a unique capability, ensuring that the U.S. can respond to any nuclear threat from multiple platforms.
So it's like having a three-pronged defense system. But why is it necessary to have all three?
Great question. Each leg of the triad offers distinct advantages. Land-based missiles are ready to launch at a moment's notice. Strategic bombers can be deployed flexibly and visibly to signal intent, and submarines provide stealth and survivability, making them the most secure second strike option. Together, they create a robust and flexible deterrent.
That makes sense. But with all these systems in place, what are the challenges that come with maintaining and developing new nuclear weapons?
One of the biggest challenges is the financial cost. Modernizing and maintaining the nuclear arsenal is incredibly expensive. For instance, the U.S. is on track to spend over $1.7 trillion on nuclear modernization over the next few decades. This includes updating all three legs of the triad, which is a significant financial burden.
Wow, that's a hefty price tag. But is it just about the money, or are there other issues at play?
Beyond the financial aspect, there's also the issue of strategic destabilization. As nations develop more advanced nuclear capabilities, it can lead to an arms race, where other countries feel compelled to enhance their own arsenals to maintain parity. This can increase global tensions and the risk of miscalculation.
It's like a never-ending cycle of keeping up with the Joneses, but on a global scale. Are there any efforts to address these challenges?
Yes, there are ongoing efforts to negotiate arms control agreements and promote disarmament. However, geopolitical tensions and differing national interests often complicate these efforts. Additionally, there's a push to develop new technologies that can enhance security without escalating the arms race, such as missile defense systems and cyber capabilities.
It's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? Trying to maintain security while avoiding an escalation. But do you think there's a way forward that can address these challenges effectively?
I believe so. It requires a combination of diplomatic engagement, technological innovation, and a commitment to international cooperation. By working together, nations can find ways to reduce nuclear risks and promote a more stable and secure world.
Let's hope that collaboration prevails. It's clear that the stakes are incredibly high, and the path forward is as complex as it is crucial.
As we move from global strategies to regional dynamics, let's delve into the nuclear tensions that exist in specific regions, particularly in the Middle East. This area has been a hotspot for nuclear concerns, with countries like Israel, Syria, and Iran playing significant roles.
The Middle East definitely seems like a complex puzzle when it comes to nuclear capabilities. Let's start with Israel. It's often mentioned in discussions about nuclear weapons, but there's a lot of secrecy, right?
Exactly. Israel maintains a policy of ambiguity regarding its nuclear arsenal, neither confirming nor denying its existence. However, it's widely believed that Israel possesses nuclear weapons, which it views as a crucial deterrent given its geopolitical situation.
So it's like having an ace up your sleeve but never showing it. How does this impact the region?
Israel's nuclear capability is a significant factor in regional security dynamics. It influences the strategic calculations of its neighbors, some of whom have pursued their own weapons of mass destruction programs, like Syria.
Syria, that's interesting. What can you tell me about their program?
Syria has been involved in developing chemical and biological weapons, and there were concerns about its nuclear ambitions, especially after an Israeli airstrike in 2007 targeted a suspected nuclear reactor in Syria. This incident highlighted the ongoing tensions and the lengths countries might go to prevent nuclear proliferation.
It's like a high-stakes game of whack-a-mole, trying to keep these programs in check. But what about Iran? Their nuclear program seems to be a constant topic of international debate.
Iran's nuclear program has a long and complex history. It began in the 1950s with U.S. support under the Atoms for Peace program. However, after the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the program became more secretive, raising suspicions about its true intentions.
And that's when the international community started getting really involved, right?
Correct. In the early 2000s, revelations about undeclared nuclear facilities in Iran led to increased scrutiny and negotiations. This culminated in the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, which aimed to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities in exchange for sanctions relief.
But things haven't exactly gone smoothly since then.
No, they haven't. The U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018 and subsequent reimposition of sanctions have strained the agreement. Iran has since breached some of its commitments, leading to renewed tensions and diplomatic efforts to bring all parties back to the negotiating table.
It's like a diplomatic roller coaster, with ups and downs at every turn. What are the current challenges in resolving these tensions?
The main challenges include rebuilding trust between Iran and the international community, addressing regional security concerns, and finding a sustainable framework that satisfies all parties involved. It's a delicate process that requires patience, diplomacy, and a willingness to compromise.
It sounds like a monumental task, but one that's absolutely necessary for regional and global stability. Let's hope for a peaceful resolution in the near future.
Having explored the regional tensions, let's now focus on the global efforts to control and reduce nuclear arsenals. These efforts are crucial in preventing the spread of nuclear weapons and ensuring a safer world.
Right. I've heard about various treaties and agreements, but how effective are they in actually reducing nuclear threat?
Great question. One of the cornerstone treaties is the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or NPT, which came into force in 1970. Its main goals are to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons, promote peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and further the goal of disarmament.
So it's like a global pact to keep nuclear weapons in check. But how do countries ensure compliance?
That's where the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, comes in. The IAEA plays a critical role in monitoring nuclear programs and ensuring compliance with treaties like the NPT. They conduct inspections, verify nuclear activities, and provide a platform for dialogue and cooperation.
It sounds like a massive responsibility. How do they manage to keep track of everything?
The IAEA employs a range of tools and technologies, from satellite imagery to on-site inspections to monitor nuclear activities. They also rely on member states to provide information and support. It's a collaborative effort that requires transparency and trust.
But what about the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty? How does that fit into the picture?
The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT, aims to ban all nuclear explosions for both civilian and military purposes. Although it has not yet entered into force, it has established a strong norm against nuclear testing, with a robust verification regime that includes seismic monitoring and other technologies to detect nuclear tests.
It's like having a global watchdog to prevent any new tests. But with all these treaties and organizations, are there still challenges in achieving disarmament?
The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT, aims to ban all nuclear explosions for both civilian and military purposes. Although it has not yet entered into force, it has established a strong norm against nuclear testing, with a robust verification regime that includes seismic monitoring and other technologies to detect nuclear tests.
It's like having a global watchdog to prevent any new tests. But with all these treaties and organizations, are there still challenges in achieving disarmament?
Absolutely. One of the main challenges is the differing priorities and security concerns of nuclear and non-nuclear states. While some countries push for complete disarmament, others prioritize maintaining a credible deterrent. Additionally, geopolitical tensions and regional conflicts can complicate disarmament efforts.
It's a complex web of interests and concerns. But are there any success stories or positive developments in this area?
Yes, there have been successes, such as the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaties between the U.S. and Russia, which have significantly reduced their nuclear arsenals. Additionally, nuclear weapon-free zones have been established in regions like Latin America and Africa, showcasing the potential for regional cooperation in disarmament.
It's encouraging to hear that progress is being made, even if it's slow. It seems like a continuous journey towards a safer world.
Indeed, it's a journey that requires ongoing commitment, dialogue, and cooperation. By working together, the international community can continue to make strides towards reducing nuclear risks and promoting peace. As we look towards the future, the trajectory of nuclear weapons development and its implications for global security remain critical topics of discussion. The landscape is continuously evolving, influenced by technological advancements and shifting geopolitical dynamics.
It's fascinating to think about where we're headed. With all the advancements in technology, how do you see nuclear weapons evolving in the coming years?
Well, one area of focus is the development of more advanced delivery systems, such as hypersonic missiles, which can travel at speeds exceeding 5 times the speed of sound. These systems could potentially outpace current missile defense capabilities, raising new strategic challenges.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But what does this mean for global security?
The introduction of such technologies could lead to a new arms race, as nations strive to develop countermeasures and maintain strategic parity. This underscores the importance of international dialogue and arms control agreements to prevent escalation and ensure stability.
It's like a high-tech chess game, where each move could have significant consequences. But what policy recommendations could help reduce nuclear risks in this evolving landscape?
One key recommendation is to prioritize secure second strike capabilities. This means ensuring that a country can respond to a nuclear attack with sufficient force to deter an adversary from considering a first strike in the first place. Submarines, due to their stealth and survivability, play a crucial role in this strategy.
So it's about maintaining a balance that discourages any rash decisions. What about nuclear testing? Is there a push to avoid new tests?
Absolutely. Avoiding new nuclear testing is vital to maintaining global norms and preventing the development of new, more destructive weapons. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, although not yet in force, remains a critical component in this effort, and there's a strong international push to uphold its principles.
It's reassuring to know that there's a concerted effort to prevent further escalation. But do you think these measures will be enough to ensure long-term security?
While these measures are important, they must be part of a broader strategy that includes diplomatic engagement, conflict resolution, and non-proliferation efforts. It's a multifaceted approach that requires cooperation and commitment from all nuclear and non-nuclear states alike.
It sounds like a monumental task, but one that's absolutely necessary for the future of global security. Let's hope that these efforts lead to a more peaceful and stable world.
Indeed, the future of nuclear weapons and global security hinges on our ability to work together, innovate responsibly, and prioritize peace over conflict. It's a challenging path, but one that's worth pursuing for the sake of future generations.